The night I almost died started with a burnt-out bulb. Jerry's campus diner, 2 a.m., and I'm elbow-deep in greasy dishes when the light above me fizzles out. No biggie, I think, grabbing the stepladder. But as I reach for the fixture, a chill runs down my spine. In the reflection of the chrome napkin dispenser, I see them 5 strangers scattered around the diner, all staring at me. Their eyes gleam with an intensity that makes my skin crawl. I blink, and they're back to normal eating, reading, typing. But that moment of collective focus? It felt like the calm before a storm. If only I'd known then what was coming. I fumbled behind the counter for the flashlight I knew was there somewhere. My fingers closed around its familiar shape, and I clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. Is everyone okay? I called out, sweeping the light across the diner. A chorus of mumbled affirmatives answered me. I could see them now, 5 faces turned towards me, squinting in the sudden brightness. There was Liam, the truck driver who'd been nursing a coffee for the past hour, his weathered face creased with concern. Mia, the art student with paint-stained fingers, clutched her sketchbook to her chest like a shield. Dr. Reeves, the psychology professor known for his late nights on campus, peered over his glasses with an air of irritation. Ethan, a local I'd seen around but never really spoken to, drummed his fingers nervously on the table. And Vicky, my co-worker who'd been about to clock out when the lights went out, stood frozen by the door. It's probably just the storm, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I'm Zoe, by the way. I'm sure the power will be back soon. Liam stood up, his chair scraping loudly in the silence. We should check the fuse box, he suggested, moving towards the kitchen. I nodded, grateful for his initiative. It's in the back. I'll show you. As we made our way through the kitchen, the beam of the flashlight casting long shadows, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt thick, charged with more than just the storm outside. We located the fuse box, but flipping the switches did nothing. The diner remained stubbornly dark. Must be the whole block, Liam muttered. Or worse. When we returned to the dining area, the atmosphere had shifted. Dr. Reeves was pacing, muttering something under his breath. Mia had moved to sit with Ethan, both of them whispering urgently. Vicky was trying to get a signal on her phone. No luck with the fuses, I announced. And my phone's dead. Anyone got a signal? A collective checking of phones revealed what I'd feared. We were cut off. No power, no phones, no way to call for help or information. So what do we do now? Mia asked, her voice small in the vast darkness. We wait, I said, trying to sound reassuring. The storm can't last forever. But as another crash of thunder shook the diner, I couldn't help but wonder if waiting was really our best option. Or our only one. As the minutes ticked by, the initial shock of our situation gave way to a restless unease. I distributed candles from our emergency kit, their flickering light casting eerie shadows across the diner's worn linoleum. We should introduce ourselves properly, Dr. Reeves suggested, his authoritative tone cutting through the tense silence. It might help pass the time. We went around the circle, sharing names and reasons for being at the diner at such an ungodly hour. But as we talked, I noticed discrepancies. Ethan claimed to be a night owl who frequented the diner, yet I'd rarely seen him before. Mia's story about an art project deadline seemed rehearsed, her eyes darting nervously as she spoke. As the conversation progressed, alliances began to form. Liam and Dr. Reeves huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Mia and Ethan seemed oddly familiar with each other for supposed strangers. Vicky, usually chatty, remained uncharacteristically quiet. A loud clang from the kitchen made us all jump. Probably just a pan falling, I said, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. I'll check it out, Liam offered, grabbing the flashlight. He disappeared into the kitchen, the beam of light vanishing with him. Moments later, Vicky's shrill voice pierced the air. My purse. It's gone. Accusations flew as quickly as the rain lashing against the windows. Everyone denied involvement, but suspicion hung heavy in the air. Maybe it just fell in the dark, I suggested, trying to keep the peace. But as I helped Vicky search, I caught sight of Dr. Reeves slipping something into his pocket. My heart raced. Could he have taken the purse? Just then, Liam returned from the kitchen, his face pale. "The back door is locked," he announced. "From the outside." A chill ran down my spine as the implication sank in. We weren't just trapped by the storm. Someone had locked us in. As panic threatened to overtake us, a flash of lightning illuminated the diner. In that split second, I saw Dr. Reeves slip something into his pocket, Vicky's missing wallet. Suddenly, everything clicked. The whispers, the missing items, the locked door. This wasn't just bad luck, it was a setup. But before I could say anything, the lights flickered back to life. The sudden brightness was disorienting, and in the confusion, I saw Ethan and Liam exchange a knowing glance. They weren't strangers at all. As realization dawned on me, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Mia, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't say a word," she whispered. "They're not who they say they are." My mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want? And most importantly, how are we going to get out of this alive? The police arrived shortly after, responding to a tripped silent alarm. As they took statements, I watched my fellow captives carefully. Smiles were exchanged, stories corroborated. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a group of strangers bonding over a shared ordeal. But I knew better. As I left the diner, the weight of unspoken secrets hung heavy in the air. The night shift would never be the same again. And as I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something told me our paths would cross again, whether I wanted them to or not. The blare of the alarm shattered the lecture hall's silence. Another drill, I thought, exchanging knowing glances with my classmates. We'd rehearsed this a dozen times. But as we filed out, following our well-practiced routine, a series of sharp cracks echoed down the hallway. My stomach dropped. Those weren't blanks. The screams that followed confirmed my worst fear. This was no drill. Through the door's window, I glimpsed dark figures moving with chilling purpose. In that moment, I realized we were facing something far more calculated than we'd ever prepared for. Our campus had become a battleground, and I was caught in the crossfire. My name's Ava Chen, and until today, I was just another junior at Evergreen State University, juggling my computer science major with ROTC training. Now, I'm not sure what I am, survivor, witness, or unwitting player in something much bigger than I ever imagined. As chaos erupted around me, my ROTC training kicked in. "Everyone, stay calm," I shouted over the din. "We need to barricade the doors." A few of my classmates snapped out of their shock and started moving desks. I caught the eye of Marcus Reeves, a lanky senior I knew from the campus tech club. He nodded, understanding passing between us. "Ava, what's the plan?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "The computer lab," I said. "It's more secure, and we might be able to access the security feeds from there." We organized a group of about 15 students and made our way down the hall. The sounds of panic echoed from other parts of the building, but our immediate area was eerily quiet. As we rounded the corner to the lab, I held up a hand, signaling everyone to stop. Two figures in dark clothing were trying to force open the lab door. My heart pounded as I weighed our options. We couldn't go back. The open hallway left us too exposed. Just as I was about to suggest we try to overpower them, the figures turned. I bit back a gasp of relief. It was campus security. "Officer Kendrick," I called out, recognizing the woman who often patrolled our building. She whirled around, her hand on her holster. "Ava, what are you all doing here? You need to evaluate immediately." "We thought this would be the safest place," I explained quickly. "Can you tell us what's going on?" Officer Kendrick's face was grim. "We're not sure yet. Multiple armed intruders on campus. They seem to be targeting specific buildings, but we don't know why." As she spoke, Marcus had already bypassed the lab's electronic lock. We filed in quickly, Officer Kendrick bringing up the rear. "Okay, listen up," she said, her voice taut. "I need to rendezvous with my team. You all stay here, barricade the door, and do not open it for anyone but campus security or law enforcement." Understood? As the door closed behind her, I turned to the bank of computers. Marcus, help me access the security feeds. Something doesn't feel right about this, and I want to know what we're really dealing with. Little did I know, we were about to uncover something far more terrifying than a random attack. Marcus's fingers flew over the keyboard as he hacked into the campus security system. I leaned in, scanning the feeds as they flickered to life on the screen. What I saw made my stomach churn. They're not random, I muttered, watching the intruders move with military precision. Look, they're bypassing valuable targets. This isn't about theft or terror. Marcus nodded grimly. They're heading straight for the bioengineering building. But why? A memory flashed through my mind, a recent campus newspaper article about groundbreaking research happening there. Dr. Thornton, I said. She's been working on something big. Controversial, too. Rumor has it the government's been sniffing around. We have to warn her, Marcus said, his face pale but determined. I knew he was right, but the thought of leaving our safe haven made my heart race. It's too dangerous, I argued, even as I realized we might be the only ones who could help. After a heated debate, we formed a small group, Marcus, myself, and 3 others who volunteered. We used the security feeds to plot a route, timing our movements between the intruders' patrols. The campus, usually bustling with life, was a ghost town. Discarded backpacks and overturned chairs littered the quad. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. We ducked behind buildings, froze at every sound, our nerves fraying with each passing minute. A sudden movement set us scrambling for cover. I held my breath, certain we'd been spotted. But it was just a campus security officer, not Kendrick, someone I didn't recognize. He looked as terrified as we felt. What are you doing out here? He hissed. There's a lockdown. We're trying to reach the bioengineering lab, I explained quickly. We think that's their target. His eyes widened. That's where I'm headed. Come on, I'll escort you. Relief washed over me, but something nagged at the back of my mind. Why would a lone officer be heading there? We followed him across the eerily silent campus. As we approached the bioengineering building, I noticed something odd. The door was already open, and there were no signs of forced entry. The officer ushered us inside, his demeanor suddenly changing. Dr. Thornton, he called out. The package is here. My blood ran cold as I realized our terrible mistake. Dr. Thornton emerged from her lab, her face a mask of calm. You're early, she said, her eyes flicking over our group. The officer removed his cap, revealing a face I recognized with shocked Dean Blackwell. We had some unexpected variables, he said, nodding towards us. I felt like I was drowning. What's going on? I managed to choke out. Dr. Thornton's eyes were cold as she explained. We're protecting years of work from those who would bury it. Sometimes, progress requires extreme measures. The full horror of the situation crashed over me. The attack, the fear, the chaos, all orchestrated to smuggle out controversial research before a government audit. We weren't here to save anyone. We were now the only loose ends in their plan. Dean Blackwell's hand moved towards his weapon. I'm sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all. But we can't have any witnesses. In the end, the truth came out. An alert security guard had noticed the inconsistencies and called for backup. The intruders, along with Dr. Thornton and Dean Blackwell, were arrested. But the experience left an indelible mark on all of us. Every time an alarm sounds on campus, I feel my pulse quicken. In quiet moments, I wonder how much of what we're told is real. The bioengineering lab stands empty now, a stark reminder of that day. On a campus that now feels like a fortress, trust has become the scarcest resource of all. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I still hear whispers about unfinished research. The metallic tang of blood filled my nostrils as I scrubbed furiously at the basement floor. My phone buzzed, another frantic text from Tyler. What do we do with the body? I glanced at the freezer, its low hum a sinister reminder of our predicament. How did I, Jake Thompson, straight a student and most promising sophomore, end up here? It wasn't supposed to go this far. Rush Week was about tradition, brotherhood, not this nightmare. As I heard footsteps upstairs, panic seized me. It wasn't just our lives on the line anymore, but the dark secrets of Westfield University itself. Just a month ago, I was on top of the world. Sigma Tau Omega had chosen me, Jake Thompson, to lead this year's Rush Week. Me, a sophomore, picked over juniors and seniors. It was unprecedented, they said. A chance to prove myself, to secure my place in the fraternity's inner circle. "You've got what it takes," Jake, Brad Whitmore, our chapter president, had told me, his arm draped heavily over my shoulders. "You understand what this brotherhood means, what it requires." I nodded eagerly, chest swelling with pride. If only I'd noticed a predatory glint in his eyes. The first few days were a blur of planning meetings and late-night brainstorming sessions. The other brothers pushed for more extreme events, each suggestion making my stomach churn a little more. "We need to top last year," Steve Jennings, a senior, insisted. "The alumni are watching. They expect results." I tried to argue for moderation, but my voice was drowned out by enthusiastic agreement. "Don't go soft on us now, Jake," Brad warned, his tone light but his eyes hard. As Rush Week kicked off, I found myself swept up in the adrenaline. The music, the crowds, the cheering, it was intoxicating. I watched as eager freshmen lined up outside our house, eyes wide with anticipation and nerves. 3 pledges stood out from the start. Tyler Reeves, a lanky kid with a mop of curly hair, practically vibrated with excitement. He was the first to volunteer for every challenge, his eagerness both endearing and unsettling. Then there was Marcus Holloway, quiet and observant. He hung back, watching everything with wary eyes. I caught him flinching when the challenges were announced, but he never backed down. Lastly, Ethan Blackwood. From the moment he swaggered in, I knew he'd be trouble. His smirk never wavered, even as the tasks grew more daunting. There was something in his eyes, a darkness that made me uneasy. As the week progressed, the challenges escalated. What started as silly dares and drinking games morphed into something more sinister. I found myself pushing boundaries I never thought I'd cross, all under the watchful eyes of Brad and the other seniors. "You're doing great, Jake," Brad would say, clapping me on the back. But each time, his grip seemed tighter, his smile a little more forced. I was trapped in a game I no longer understood, with rules that shifted like quicksand beneath my feet. By Wednesday night, I was drowning in a sea of guilt and anxiety. The basement of our frat house had become a chamber of horrors, echoing with the sounds of retching pledges and mocking laughter from my brothers. I caught Marcus's eye as he stumbled through a particularly nasty obstacle course we'd set up. His face was pale, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead. For a moment, I saw myself reflected in his terrified gaze, and my stomach lurched. "Keep it together," I muttered, more to myself than to him. That night, I couldn't sleep. The faces of the pledges haunted me, their expressions morphing from excitement to fear to something worse, resignation. I tossed and turned, the sheets tangling around my legs like accusing fingers. My roommate, Alex, noticed my distress. "Jake, man, you okay?" he asked, concern etching his features. "You've been acting weird all week." I wanted to tell him everything, to spill my guts about the increasingly dangerous stunts, the pressure from the seniors, the gnawing feeling that something was terribly wrong. But the words stuck in my throat, trapped behind a wall of misplaced loyalty and fear. "It's just Rush Week stress," I lied, forcing a smile. "Nothing I can't handle." Thursday brought a new level of hell. One of our drinking games went too far, and a pledge, a kid named Charlie with bright eyes and a quick laugh, ended up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. Panic set in as Brad and Steve huddled with me in the corner of the ER waiting room. "We need to keep this quiet," Brad hissed, his eyes darting around nervously. "The university can't find out." "But shouldn't we tell someone?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Steve's hand clamped down on my shoulder, his fingers digging in painfully. "Listen carefully, Jake. This isn't just about us anymore. There are powerful people invested in this fraternity. Alumni who expect certain traditions to be maintained. Do you understand?" The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud, I nodded mutely, feeling the last shreds of my integrity crumble away. As we left the hospital, having successfully pressured Charlie into silence, I overheard Brad on the phone. "Yes, sir. Everything's on track. The final event will proceed as planned." A chill ran down my spine. What had I gotten myself into? The basement was silent except for the hum of the old freezer. I stared at the pledges, their faces a mix of fear and anticipation. "Last task, boys," I heard myself say, my voice steadier than I felt. That's when the door burst open. I expected campus security, maybe even the cops. Instead, Dean Harriman strode in, followed by 2 alumni I recognized from the photos in our trophy room. Their eyes gleamed with a hunger that made my skin crawl. "Well done, Jake," the dean said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You've prepared them perfectly." As understanding dawned, I realized with horror that Rush Week was just the beginning. The alumni moved among the pledges, assessing them like prized cattle. I caught a glimpse of documents changing hands, heard whispers of internships and connections. This wasn't hazing. It was grooming. Months later, I still wake up in cold sweats. The pledges who made it through that night walk around campus with a haunted look I know all too well. Sometimes, I think about coming clean, exposing it all. But then I catch the dean's eye across the quad, where I notice an alumnus's car parked outside the frat house, and I remember, in this brotherhood, secrets are the strongest bonds. And the most dangerous. The musty scent of old paper filled my nostrils as I sifted through the university archives. Just another boring night of research, I thought. Then my fingers brushed against a folder, unmarked and wedged behind a stack of dusty books. As I pulled it out, a yellowed photograph slipped to the floor. My blood ran cold. There, in grainy black and white, stood my great-grandfather, a man I'd never met, surrounded by men in lab coats, standing before a yawning tunnel entrance. On the back, scrawled in faded ink, Project Echo, Subject 37 successful. God forgive us. The day after finding that ominous note, I met with Dr. Eleanor Blackwood, my thesis advisor. Her office was a cluttered mess of books and papers, the air thick with the scent of old leather and coffee. "Avery," she said, peering at me over her wire-rimmed glasses, "you look like you've seen a ghost." I hesitated, then pulled out the note. "I found something in the archives, Dr. Blackwood. Something about experiments in the tunnels during World War II. Her face paled. "Avery, some stones are better left unturned. This isn't just about history anymore. You're treading on dangerous ground." Her reaction only fueled my curiosity. I left her office more determined than ever to uncover the truth. That evening, I called my best friend, Marcus Chen. If anyone could help me dig deeper, it was him. We met at our favorite coffee shop just off campus, the buzz of students and clinking cups providing cover for our conversation. "Dude, you're not gonna believe this," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. I filled him in on everything, the files, the note, Dr. Blackwood's reaction. Marcus leaned in, his eyes wide. "This is some serious stuff, AV. You sure you want to keep going?" I nodded. "I have to know. Can you help me access the university's old records? There might be something in the digital archives we missed." He cracked his knuckles, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Challenge accepted. Give me a couple of days." As we left the coffee shop, I noticed a figure watching us from across the street. They quickly turned away when I looked directly at them, disappearing into the evening crowd. The next day, I decided to talk to Carl Jennings, the retired janitor who'd worked at Millbrook for half a century. If anyone knew the tunnels, it would be him. I found him at the local park, feeding pigeons. His withered hands trembled slightly as he tossed breadcrumbs. "Mr. Jennings?" I approached cautiously. "I'm Avery Thornton, a student at Millbrook. I was hoping to ask you about the tunnels under the university." He froze, his roomy eyes suddenly sharp with fear. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice a harsh whisper. "No one," I assured him. "I'm doing research for my thesis," and he cut me off, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "Listen to me, kid. Forget about those tunnels. Forget you ever heard about them. Some things should stay buried. With that, he shuffled away, leaving me standing there, more confused and intrigued than ever. Marcus came through 2 days later, his face ashen as he burst into my dorm room. "AV, you're not going to believe what I found," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He pulled out his laptop and showed me a series of encrypted files he'd managed to access. As we scrolled through, my blood ran cold. The documents detailed a series of psychological experiments conducted in the tunnels during the Cold War era, not World War II as I'd initially thought. The university had been secretly contracted by the government to test the effects of prolonged isolation and sensory deprivation on human subjects. "This is insane," I muttered, scanning the reports. "How could they have kept this hidden for so long?" Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me in the library basement. 11 p.m. Come alone if you want answers." Against Marcus's protests, I decided to go. The library was eerily quiet as I made my way down to the basement, my footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. As I reached the bottom, I saw a figure standing in the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. The figure stepped forward, revealing Dean Victoria Hartley. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her eyes wild with fear and something else, desperation. "Avery," she said, her voice low and urgent. "You need to stop this investigation immediately. You have no idea what you're getting into." "Why?" I demanded. "What are you trying to hide?" She glanced around nervously before continuing. "Those experiments, they never truly ended. The tunnels are still in use, Avery. But not by the government anymore. There are powerful people involved, people who will do anything to keep this quiet." As she spoke, I heard footsteps approaching from behind. Before I could react, something hard struck the back of my head, and everything went black. I woke up in complete darkness, the air thick and musty. As my eyes adjusted, I realized with horror that I was in the tunnels. Panic set in as I remembered the experiments I'd read about. Was I now a subject? Suddenly, a door creaked open, flooding the space with harsh light. A figure entered, Dr. Blackwood. "I'm sorry it's come to this, Avery," she said, her voice filled with genuine regret. "But we can't let this information get out. You understand, don't you? It's for the greater good." As she stepped closer, I saw the family resemblance, the same eyes, the same determined set of the jaw. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Dr. Blackwood wasn't just trying to protect the university's secrets. She was protecting her own legacy, and mine. We were both descendants of the original experimenters. I managed to escape that night, but the truth weighs heavily on me. The experiments, the cover-ups, the family legacy, it's all too much. I've destroyed my research and withdrawn from my thesis. Some truths are too dangerous to reveal. But late at night, I still hear whispers from the vents in my dorm room. And sometimes, I catch glimpses of familiar faces watching me from the shadows. Am I paranoid, or have I become part of something I can never truly escape? Like the story? Hit like and subscribe. See you in the next story popping up on your screen at this exact moment.